Well, good morning. So I thought today I would explore the idea of suffering, maybe looking at ways to reduce suffering. What is suffering? Well, suffering is when you can't have something you want, or you can't get rid of something you don't want, or a state of ennui, not knowing what you want. So, what causes suffering? What makes it so that we experience suffering, stress, sadness, grief, loss? Where does that come in? How does that play out? So, first of all, suffering is caused by not being able to keep something that we want to keep, not being able to get a hold of something that we want to possess, or having something that we just can't seem to get rid of, like a disease would be a good example of that. You have a disease and you're kind of stuck with that. You can't really escape having the disease, like you're a diabetic or something like that, right? So either you have something you don't want, or you want something you don't seem to be able to get. And so really, suffering starts with desire. The desire to have, to possess, to own, and the desire to push away, repulse something you don't want to have. So desire. So desire isn't possible unless there is something that is desiring and something to be desired. In the case of something that is desiring, that's the creation of that is the result of desire, is the I, me, mine, the grasping self, the clinging, the craving self. The object of desire, there has to be an object of desire, is actually a construct, something you've created in your own mind that really, for all intents and purposes, is imaginary, is yours, but it's your creation. So, suffering. Suffering is caused by clinging, craving, which is caused by desire, which creates the I, me, mine self and the object of desire. And so, what to do about that? Is there something that can be done to make suffering less, reduce it, reduce stress, reduce the egocentric, the bondage to ego that we all struggle with or have an experience with? So what's the solution? The solution is letting go, learning to let go, learning not to cling, learning to free yourself from cravings, to let go of attachments. So some of the things the Buddha said seems like they fit here. One thing is, and any desire for an object would fall into the category of a viewpoint, because you're having a static viewpoint of that object in this moment that creates this arrangement, the clinging, craving arrangement between the I, me, mine, and the object of desire. So it's a viewpoint. It's a point of view that creates this whole scenario. And the Buddha talked about viewpoints. He said that we should be very careful not to become attached to viewpoints. He even said at some point in his teachings that even his teachings, which are viewpoints, should not be something that's attached to. He even referred to his teachings as being like a boat that you might use to get across a river. And once you get to the other side, you don't throw the boat on your back and carry it across land. You let go of the boat. So even his teachings are not intended to be held on to. They're not intended to be attached to. So letting go. One of the things to think about when you're thinking about that object of desire, first of all, you can't know that object from its own side. You can only know that object from your side, the side of the I, me, mine, the view that you have of it, which is a construct, a creation of your mind. And if you really look deeply into this object, the one thing you can say about it is the object is motion itself. It is constantly in a state of motion. And to move means to be in different places at different times, which means that the object of your desire is constantly changing. 1 minute it's this, and the next minute it's that. In a sense, it's not substantial. Remember, it's a construct of your own mind to begin with. It has no real substance because it's continually being something else. So what's an example of that? Well, let's take alcohol, because that seems to be a thing that people get attached to in our society, our culture. So when you first have a drink, and like it's your first time, or you really feel good. It makes you feel cheerful and jubilant, and makes you want to dance and makes you feel really, really happy. So you might say to yourself, "Wow, this really works good. I really like this alcohol. I'm going to do it again," because we tend to do that. We tend to repeat behaviors that we find to be reinforcing, right? Basic behavioral theory. So, it felt really good the first time, and so we do it again, and it probably felt, it feels pretty good the second time, and maybe the third time, and the 10th time, and the 30th time. But remember the idea that everything's in motion. So you're in motion, and the object of your desire, in this case, alcohol, is in motion. Things are changing. So what really felt good, what seemed to make your life better, could turn into something that makes your life worse, that really doesn't make you feel good. Or the feeling good is a very temporary state followed by crisis and catastrophe and disaster. You get a DUI, your wife leaves you because you drink too much. So what at one point in time appeared to be good, at some later point in time turns around and becomes its opposite. So you could think of the whole idea of dialectics. So we have the alcohol, its original relationship you have to it. That would be the thesis. And then because the alcohol and you are in a continual state of motion, eventually that alcohol becomes its antithesis. It actually becomes the subject of catastrophe and crisis, and it makes your life not good as opposed to what it used to do. And then finally, of course, there's the synthesis. Well, the synthesis might be a discovery of a new awareness of attachment and craving and clinging and all those kinds of things, which leads to you deciding to enter into a spiritual recovery. So that, the dialectics of motion. So since the object of our desire is in motion, if we really see it that way, as we see it as something that's impermanent, that's moving from thesis to antithesis, hopefully to synthesis, then we start to think of it as being something that we need to maybe not hold on to so tightly, maybe not to cling to. That brings to mind that idea, there's a couple of things here that brings to mind. One is an analogy or example that the Buddha gave when he was talking about not really knowing a thing from its own side, only being able to know that thing from your side. So in this case, you walk into a dark space, and in the corner, you see a coiled object. And your immediate response to the object is, that's a snake. And of course, you're frightened because it's a very large snake. Then somebody in the space turns on the light. And then now you notice that object of a snake that you constructed in your own mind is actually just a rope coiled in the corner. So it's no longer an object of fear, and so you easily can let it go and move on to a new, more, less fearful, more fearless state. So first thing is knowing, in terms of learning how to let go, knowing that you really can't know that object of desire from its own side. You can only know the object of desire from your side, and your side is a construction of your mind. The second thing in terms of letting go is realizing that object of desire is in motion. It's continually moving from one form that you construct in your mind to another form that you construct in your mind. 1 minute it can be really good, and the next minute not so good. So that's the second consideration when you're thinking about how to let go. What else might you think about when you're letting go? So there's certainly viewpoints, because what we're really talking about here is a viewpoint. There's certainly viewpoints that serve us, and that we would probably want to, like, for instance, the teachings of the Buddha. The teachings of the Buddha serve us. They provide us with a pathway, a way of moving from a point in space, a time, or whatever, where we're one thing, to another point in time and space where we're becoming something else. So certain viewpoints, like the 5 precepts of Buddhism, they serve us. But how should you deal with them? Should you hold on to them? Should you cling to them? Should you become attached to them, hold on to them so tightly? Well, I always think of this, example or analogy of holding on to a rope that is being pulled from the other side. So you hold on to that rope tightly, using all your strength to hold the rope, because you don't want to let go of that rope. And the other side is pulling on that rope and pulling on that rope, and you're struggling to hold on to it. Well, if the other side pulls really, really hard, the rope is going to be ripped from your hands, in which case your hands are going to become abraded and injured, and you'll be forced to let go of your attachment, but the release will be painful. And that's, of course, the nature of suffering. Just like suddenly realizing one day that alcohol is not really working for you, but still being very much attached to the alcohol. So how might you hold on to that rope so that you won't face injury at some point in the future? Maybe hold on to it lightly with your fingers. just ever so lightly. And if the rope is suddenly pulled out of your hands, well, no harm done. It's easy to just open your hands and let the rope go. And that's how you should probably treat everything, including the Buddhist teachings. Certainly anything I'm saying, you should hold on very lightly. So holding on to things is not necessarily bad, but, holding on to them lightly so that they're easy to let go of it is a better way to prevent suffering than holding on tightly. Another thought that occurs to me is that you should consider anything that you desire, an object of your desire. You should consider the thoughts and teachings of wise people in your community, your wise peers, your wise teachers. What's their take on this? Do they have thoughts on this that you might need to consider? The other thing is, does this thing really make your life better when you deeply, introspectively analyze it? If you really look at alcohol, even when you first, come in contact with it, does it really make your life better? Does it really make you happier? It might make you happier for the moments that you're intoxicated, as long as you don't drink too much of it, because if you drink too much of it, you'll get a hangover. And so there's a price to be paid. Every up, there's a down. Considering the common sense of holding on or having holding on to this object of your desire. So that's something to take into consideration. What do the people around you say about drinking? Are they, are they talking about drinking, as the be all and end all or whatever, the thing that everybody should do? Or are they saying it's something you should be wise about? You should be careful of. You should, moderate any use that you have. Use it as if you're holding on to it lightly with your fingertips. So letting go is the key to reducing suffering. So, but somebody's going to say, aren't there things we hold on to that really, really, they're good. We know they're good. Everybody tells us they're good. We can tell their common sense says they're good. They feel good. So that makes me think of the Buddhist story of the farmer and the horses. So there was a farmer, and he had a horse, and one day that horse ran away. And the horse was important to the farmer because the farmer used the horse to pull the plow to plow his fields. And it was that time of the year when plowing the fields was, something he was supposed to be doing. And here his horse ran away. So his neighbor came along and he said, "Oh, that's so terrible. Your horse ran away. I don't know what you're going to do. This is awful." And the farmer said, "How do I know what's good or bad?" And of course, the next day, the farmer's horse returns, followed by a herd of horses. And the farmer's neighbor comes and said, "Oh, you're so lucky. All those horses. What a good deal for you. You'll be able to sell those horses at the market and make a small fortune." And of course, the farmer said, "How do I know what's good or bad?" And of course, his son went into the business of breaking horses so he could sell them at the market and make them rideable. And when he was doing that, he fell off the horse and broke his leg. The farmer's neighbor came along and said, "Oh, this is so terrible. How will you work the farm without the help of your son now that he can't work because he has a broken leg?" And of course, the farmer says, "How do I know it's good or bad?" The next day, the army comes through town looking for young men to draft, and they pass by the farmer's son because he has a broken leg. How do I know it's good or bad? So part of holding on, is realizing that what you may believe is good is in motion. It may turn into something else at some point. It's constantly in a state of change. So thinking that something is good doesn't necessarily mean that it is good. It could end up being something else. So developing a skillful way of letting go. One of the things, that's sort of a useful technique for making yourself a letting go kind of person is meditation. So, there's a few things to think about in meditation. One is meditation itself helps you discipline the mind to keep the mind focused and to be able to help you pay attention so that you can notice the changes before they become catastrophic. It helps you become mindful of the changes. Also, it helps you realize this whole dynamic that I've been talking about, this dialectical dynamic. So for instance, one of the things that often happens to people who meditate is eventually, in the midst of their meditation, they experience a powerful feeling of bliss. And when they do, they think, this is good, this is wonderful, this is so amazing. I experience bliss. Isn't that what we're supposed to be chasing here? We're supposed to be experiencing bliss. And of course, the next time they meditate, they come into the meditation holding tightly onto this idea that they're supposed to be experiencing bliss. They have a desire for bliss, and they are holding on to this object of their desire tightly. And of course, when they don't experience this next time, because their meditation maybe is so focused and goal-oriented that they can't let go because they're holding on tightly to bliss. And so they'll keep chasing this bliss until finally they realize that by chasing bliss, you make bliss an object of desire, and it becomes the goal of your meditation, and the result is you can't achieve what you're trying to achieve. Bliss was achieved by letting go, and since you're chasing bliss, you can't let go. So learning how, through meditation, to let go, letting go of the thoughts that keep coming back over and over and over again. You're sitting there meditating, and you're trying to focus, and suddenly you become distracted by a thought storm, you might say. And that thought storm distracts you, and off you go on a tangent. And then you realize that you're off on this tangent, and then you let go of the tangent and bring your attention back to the object of your meditation. Or maybe you're meditating on an objectless object. You're mindfully meditating. In whatever way, a meditation practice helps you develop skillfulness when it comes to letting go. So that's my thoughts for today. I hope that, as you're practicing meditation, you'll think in terms of letting go. You'll realize that the object of meditation is in motion, and that desire creates the arrangement between the I, me, mine object, the me, myself, which is an attachment in and of itself, and that I, me, mine becomes attached to this object, and the result is, because of the idea of impermanence, the result is suffering, having to let go, forcefully having the rope ripped from your hands, and in which case you'll suffer. So thank you very much for listening to me today. Namaste.